Welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wishing you an enjoyable listening experience. Today, the book I'm interpreting for you is The Like Switch. In our impressions, there are generally two types of spies in movies and TV shows. One type is the traitor who sells information to multiple parties. The other type is the undercover agent who infiltrates enemy camps to gather intelligence, similar to what we see in movies. This book describes the primary work of spies, which isn't about being undercover or being a traitor. It's about recruitment, which leads us to the question, what does recruitment mean? Recruitment involves infiltrating the adversary's camp, persuading others to gather information about their own country or organization, and providing confidential information to our side. The process of recruiting spies is essentially about befriending enemy spies, establishing a friendly relationship, and gaining their trust and liking. The focal point of a spy's work is intentionally building friendships with people who wouldn't naturally become friends. You might wonder, for those who are willing to betray their country or organization, isn't it just about money? Can't you just pay them enough? Then why go through the effort of gaining their trust and liking? If you can win the affection and trust of the target for recruitment, it's like adding an extra layer of security to the mission. In the initial stages of contact, this positive rapport prevents the other party from getting suspicious and raising alarms. Moving into the middle phase of contact, this goodwill ensures smooth cooperation, guaranteeing the quality of the information they provide. And in the later stages of contact, due to their liking for you, it prevents them from becoming double agents. The author of this book is Jack Schaefer, an FBI agent and intelligence consultant. He's an expert in making friends, not only being skilled in recruitment himself, gaining the trust of enemy spies and interrogation subjects, but also developing a set of spy recruitment techniques for the FBI. He specifically trains FBI agents in the art of interrogation, teaching them how to earn the trust and liking of enemies. The methods of recruitment the author presents can also be extended to our everyday lives. He believes that building friendships isn't based on elusive fate but on a quantifiable approach. Since spies can establish friendships that wouldn't normally be considered under normal circumstances, he's confident that through this book, he can provide you with a formula for friendship, a switch. Once you activate this switch, you can make people like you and trust you. The interpretation of this book is divided into two main sections. First, it unveils how spies recruit others. The second part is about how to gain trust from others just like a spy would. Next, I'll approach this from these two aspects, taking you through the friendship lessons from the FBI. First, let's follow along with a spy mission detailed in the book, and see how spies recruit others. Compared to sending undercover agents or intricately placing one's own people within the enemy's ranks, it's evident that recruiting individuals from the adversary's side is more efficient. The most critical part of recruiting someone is gaining their favor and even establishing friendship. This recruiting mission is referred to as Operation Hue, in which the FBI planned to convert a foreign diplomat from another country into an American spy within 3 months. The FBI nicknamed this diplomat, a high-ranking diplomat, as Hue. Once Hue became a spy for the United States, the valuable information he provided would enable the U.S. to gain advantages in many international matters. The focus of this operation, according to the FBI, lies in two aspects. Firstly, the undercover agent sent by the FBI must establish a solid friendship with Hue, gaining his trust and goodwill. Secondly, once the initial connection is established, an offer with an irresistible and substantial financial incentive must be presented to Hue. Both these points are equally crucial, one cannot be missing. And indeed, while the second point, discussing the financial offer, is relatively straightforward, establishing friendship is the more challenging part. Firstly, the intelligence division initiated an investigation into Hue's background. Hue himself was a senior diplomat, a well-trained intelligence officer, akin to an FBI agent in the enemy country. He had missed out on promotions several times. The more valuable piece of information was accidentally overheard. He mentioned to his wife that he admired the American way of life and was considering retiring to the U.S. after his career. Hue also expressed concerns about the insufficient retirement pension provided by his country, fearing he couldn't enjoy a comfortable retirement. With this information, the analysts believed that offering Hue a substantial financial incentive could significantly decrease his loyalty to his homeland. The FBI was eager to find what the other side desired, and since Hue needed money, offering him money seemed a logical approach. However, his wariness was high, and if the approach was too aggressive, he could become suspicious. The challenge was how to communicate their intentions without startling Hugh, gaining his trust in the process. FBI agent Charles, dispatched for this mission, needed to subtly develop a relationship with Hugh. Charles was instructed not to approach or talk to Hugh initially. Instead, he merely appeared on the route Hugh took to the store every week, creating familiarity without direct interaction. As a trained intelligence officer himself, Hugh quickly detected Charles as an FBI agent. However, Charles didn't hide his identity. He neither approached nor intercepted Hugh, simply making sure Hugh noticed him without showing any overt interest. Over the next few weeks, Charles increased nonverbal interactions with Hugh. When their eyes met, Charles would raise an eyebrow, tilt his head, or nod. These nonverbal signals were decoded by the human brain as friendly and non-threatening. After 2 months of this interaction, Hugh began occasionally exchanging glances with Charles. A few more weeks went by, and when Hugh reached for a can on a shelf, Charles boldly took a can of beans and said, "Hello, I'm Charles, an FBI agent." Hugh seemed relieved and laughed, saying, "I figured." From this seemingly uneventful and prolonged initial phase, an incredible bond had formed between Hugh and Charles. Hugh eventually agreed to provide confidential information to Charles regularly. While it might seem like Charles succeeded effortlessly, the truth was that since Hugh was also an intelligence officer, he maintained vigilance towards any suspicious individuals, erecting psychological barriers to avoid contact. So, for their first interaction to be successful, the foreign agent had to accept the American agent on a psychological level. This necessitated dismantling Hugh's psychological defenses and instilling a favorable impression of Charles. Thus, the initial strategy of contact without communication was crucial. The groundwork was meticulous, with Charles slowly and cautiously breaking down Hugh's psychological defenses over 3 months. Their first conversation came late. Each of their carefully planned contacts, including the final action of picking up a can, were calculated. In essence, the friendship between Charles and Hugh was the result of carefully calculated steps. This methodology of friendship acquisition, I call it the friendship formula. Next, let's use Operation Hugh as a case study to see how Agent Charles successfully utilized the friendship formula to recruit. We can also observe how to gain trust from people, just like a spy would, and make them like you. Here, I'll present you the friendship formula. Friendship equals proximity plus frequency plus duration plus intensity. Now, let's break it down further. Starting with the first factor, proximity. This refers to the physical distance between you and others. For instance, sharing the same space, like with your desk mate or a colleague at work who's situated nearby, creates higher proximity. Proximity is a fundamental element for building interpersonal relationships. Even without speaking, sharing physical space can draw attention to each other, enhancing mutual attraction. Under similar circumstances, a familiar face is more attractive than an unfamiliar one. It's important to note that this proximity needs to be positive and friendly. Your target person must be in an environment where they don't perceive a threat. In the context of Operation Hugh, if Charles had attempted to approach Hugh directly at the start, Hugh would instinctively raise psychological defenses, perceiving Charles as a potential threat. This could result in a confrontational and adversarial response. Charles strategically chose the location and timing of his encounters with Hugh. He positioned himself during Hugh's leisure time, such as when Hugh went shopping, detached from his busy work schedule. Hugh's relaxed and cheerful mood during these strolls allowed him to unconsciously associate the pleasant feeling with Charles's presence. Even though Charles didn't do anything specific, he left a positive impression in Hugh's mind. This phenomenon is termed misattribution of arousal. So, what is misattribution of arousal? When people recall how their friendships began, they often feel that it was just the right time and place for it to naturally occur. This notion aligns with the concept of favorable timing and circumstances. However, the theory of misattribution of arousal reminds us that it's not always the case. When people feel good about themselves but can't attribute it to specific reasons, they tend to associate this positive feeling with the person closest to them at that moment. If that person happens to be you, even if you do nothing, they'll develop a favorable impression of you. For instance, after exercising or when relieving oneself from fatigue, the brain releases endorphins, also known as the brain's natural opioids. This brings about a vague feeling of euphoria. Since endorphins are released after fatigue, people unconsciously associate this pleasant feeling with the person closest to them physically at that time, even someone who happened to be present coincidentally. This can make you appear more charming and appealing. Hence, if you're in good health and wish to establish a better relationship with someone, you can confidently extend an invitation. Organize a friendly activity like a run or a game of basketball, followed by resting and chatting together afterward. This should positively impact your relationship. In reality, your social target might not be as alert as intelligence agents, but it's still crucial to maintain a friendly demeanor. For instance, during eye contact, initiate a smile, a slight tilt of the head, or a quick raised eyebrow. You can even employ misattribution of arousal by trying to appear before them in pleasant situations, leaving them with an initial positive impression. Moving on to the second and third factors, frequency and duration, in our analysis. Frequency refers to the number of times you come into contact with someone within a specific period. Duration, on the other hand, pertains to the length of time you spend in contact with them. In the previous case, as time progressed, Charles began employing the second factor. He positioned himself along Hugh's shopping route, intentionally increasing the instances Hugh noticed him, that is, the frequency. Over a span of months, by extending his presence around Hugh and even shopping together, Charles prolonged their interaction time. Given that Hugh was already aware of Charles's presence, why invest over a month to gradually strengthen this factor? Keep in mind, betraying one's country is not a simple decision. Hugh needed time to develop his own course of action and to come to terms with the disloyalty to his cause. As previously mentioned, waiting for Mr. Hugh's defection was a pivotal part of the plan. With each passing day, Charles allowed Hugh ample time to conceive the idea of betrayal and let it mature. This also allowed Hugh to slowly convince his wife. As Charles steadily grew closer to Hugh, Hugh stopped seeing this FBI agent as a threat and began to view him as a source of hope for a brighter future. Once Hugh convinced himself, the dynamics shifted. Now, it was Hugh who eagerly awaited Charles's approach. Later on, Hugh even admitted to Charles that he was intensely curious about him and always looked forward to their interactions, wondering why the FBI agent hadn't contacted him sooner. Why was Charles able to easily win Hugh's heart? He used the combination of the curiosity punch and the principle of scarcity. Charles's intentions were apparent, yet he didn't give Hugh his undivided attention. This heightened Hugh's curiosity. By not revealing too much information, a sense of psychological scarcity was created, intensifying Hugh's desire to understand Charles. People are invariably drawn to what is not readily attainable. Hence, during the initial stages of relationship development, it's advisable not to unconditionally cater to the image of a long-term partner in your mind. Some level of unavailability can make you appear more mysterious and appealing. Speaking of which, there's another story in the book. The author once interrogated a spy named Vladimir. Vladimir swore not to speak no matter what. The author devised a plan, where every meeting, the author sat beside him reading a newspaper. At a carefully chosen moment, the author would fold the paper and walk away without saying a word. After weeks of this routine, Vladimir finally asked the author why they came to see him every day. The author nonchalantly replied, "Because I want to talk to you." This interaction, combined with ignoring him at times, motivated Vladimir to eventually speak up. The challenges of recruiting Hugh and interrogating Vladimir both hinged on curiosity. Curiosity is an instinct driven by self-preservation, reproduction, and the desire for information. Operation Hugh's challenge lay in dealing with Hugh's uncontrolled freedom. He could escape any time. Therefore, the key was to gradually release friendly information, ensnaring Hugh's curiosity, which Charles carefully orchestrated. In Vladimir's interrogation case, the difficulty was in dealing with Vladimir's defensive mindset. He was prepared to sacrifice himself to safeguard information. The approach needed to be unconventional, using disinterest and scarcity to dissolve his defenses, making him receptive and even expectant. Both Hugh and Vladimir were formidable and cautious spies. The operative focus was dismantling their defenses, encouraging relaxation, and fostering a friendly, curious attitude. In the realm of forming relationships, a controlled degree of self-disclosure is helpful. Sharing thoughts and information displays confidence and promotes necessary information exchange. It's essential to maintain a balanced demeanor, not unconditionally pandering to the potential friend's desires. Continuously clinging to them might lead to their boredom. In navigating the factors of progress, frequency, and time, these three components work together to ensure that your potential friend likes you from the outset of your relationship. Now, let's move on to discuss the next step. Once the other person has shown interest in you, what should you do next? This brings us to the fourth factor, intensity. Although we often believe that relationships naturally develop without deliberate effort, in reality, every relationship needs that extra push to solidify. Let's return to the example of Operation Hugh. As time went on, Hugh became increasingly aware of Charles's presence, while Charles, on the contrary, seemed reluctant to approach Hugh. This is precisely when the factor of intensity comes into play, the perfect moment to heighten anticipation of Charles's appearance. Charles began to eagerly anticipate Hugh's presence, deviating from his usual cautious and unhurried approach. He chose to walk straight up to Hugh and pick up a can of peas that Hugh had been buying, directly revealing his identity as an FBI agent. This action was intrusive and conveyed to Hugh that Charles was closely monitoring his actions. He knew that Hugh was about to pick up that can of peas. This action, although somewhat risky, is an example of what was mentioned earlier. When Vladimir expressed the desire to talk, the author directly reminded him of his initial promise of perpetual silence. This reminder wasn't aimed at ensuring Vladimir's compliance with his promise. Instead, it served to accelerate the dissolution of the promise. This clever employment of empathetic expression allows you to address concerns that the other person might have. In everyday conversations, empathetic expression is a powerful social tool. By focusing on the other person's feelings, you make them feel valued and cherished. In your daily life, you can use empathetic expressions like, "You seem troubled by something, you must be tired," to encourage the other person to express themselves. Don't worry about seeming too deliberate, people naturally expect to be attended to, and your inquiries won't come off as unusual. For example, if you notice someone at a gathering glancing at the door, checking the time frequently, looking absent-minded, you can approach them and friendly say, "I see you're planning to leave. Are you finding this a bit boring?" Don't be afraid that this might come off as abrupt. You're simply verbalizing what you've observed. Such statements can help put the other person at ease and open up to you. Another instance, if you're having a meal at a restaurant during peak hours and the server attending to your table is swamped, you can say something like, "You seem busy, you look tired," or, "Take your time." Such empathetic expressions can lead to unexpectedly high-quality service. When you skillfully employ empathetic expressions, you can prompt the other person to voice their concerns or vulnerabilities. This is a sign that you're becoming a potential friend to them, as few things make others happier than talking about themselves. To wrap things up, we've now decoded the essence of spy-like observation. Today, we covered two main points: first, how spies recruit others, and second, how to gain trust like a spy. We also learned the friendship formula. Friendship equals proximity plus frequency plus duration plus intensity. To earn someone's friendship, increase proximity by appearing often but not too eagerly. Once the other person responds, gradually deepen the interaction. This principle can be extended to improve and deepen any relationship, be it with longtime friends, family members, or colleagues. By working on the factors of proximity, frequency, duration, and intensity, you can enhance and enrich your relationships. In practical application, remember to exhibit friendly non-predictive behavior and be adept at deciphering microexpressions and details. For more on this topic, I recommend searching for The Art of Mastering Audiobooks. This is also the work of an FBI agent. This concludes the essence of this book. Congratulations, you've completed another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share with your family and friends. Wisdom is worth spreading, paving the way for a brighter future. Thank you, and goodbye.